Man, do we have a talented congregation here or what? Um, yeah, let's give God praise. Brass choir, you guys were fabulous this morning. You're going to play again a little later for us? Great. We're going to get you. And Megan, thank you so much. That was absolutely wonderful. And Megan's going to sing for us as well while we're doing communion distribution. It's just so much fun to be a part of the family of God here at First Lutheran. And I'm glad all of you are here. I see lots and lots of familiar faces. I see a few faces I don't know. Probably many of you are here visiting parents or else you're back in Algona for one reason or another. We're glad to have you here today. And so just to recap here, we've been on a Jesus journey the last few weeks, ever since Ash Wednesday. We've been following Jesus and seeing where he goes, where he takes us. It's been a very interesting journey. We've been through the issues of love. We've been through the issues of doubt. We've been through the issues of forgiveness. And then, of course, this last week, we've been following Jesus on the journey into Jerusalem. Where he comes in, he rides into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. He comes to Maundy, Thursday, and the Last Supper, and then he is betrayed, and he is arrested, and he is put on trial, and then he is put to death. And this now, on Easter morning, is where the Jesus journey takes us. And I have to tell you, it is completely unexpected. Let's just be honest about this. I mean, no one in the world at that time, and even today, expects that this could possibly happen. No one. The disciples have been with Jesus for 3 years. They have been on a journey of hope and life with him, and it ended on Friday. Dead is dead. Rome. They took care of another boat rocker. And they know how to do that. They don't throw them in prison. They just get rid of them. Dead is dead. Even the women, even Mary who comes to the tomb this morning, she's carrying spices, embalming fluids. No one expects this to happen. Everybody knows what to expect in the world, and this is not it. And of course, the unexpected is what happens in the story, right? Mary gets to the tomb. The door of the tomb is open. She didn't see that one coming. She goes back and announces it to the apostles, to Peter and John. They run to the tomb. They look inside. There is no Jesus anywhere to be seen. There is a pile of burial cloths on one side of the tomb, and then there's a napkin. It's a piece of cloth that's folded, that's over the top of his face. That one has very meticulously been rolled up and put off to the side. So this is no stolen body. This is no in the dark of night thing where they take him away to make it look good. Someone intentionally did this. And then there are two angels. And then there's an appearance of Jesus himself. And it is so completely unexpected. It's why we're celebrating today. It's why when I say he is risen, you say, and we shout it out loud because it is our announcement of joy and life and hope. But let's also be honest. It's completely unbelievable. How many people do you know that have risen from the dead? And I'm not talking about someone who's been in a near-death experience. I'm not talking about someone whose heart stopped on the table and they restarted it and they even had visions. I believe all those things happen. I think they're just amazing. But we're talking about someone who died on Friday afternoon and has been there Friday night, all day Saturday, and into the morning on Sunday. That's what we're talking about here. And it's so outside of our experience, so unbelievable. I can't tell you how many bad sermons I've preached on Easter. Why? Because it's so outside of our experience, I don't know what to say about it. I can't tell you how many more bad sermons I've heard on the same topic. We just don't know what to do with it. And frankly, for those who are not a part of the Christian faith, it's the reason they're not a part of the faith. They can believe in Jesus. They can believe in a wise man with great teachings. They can even believe in miracles. But when it comes to this, the centerpiece of who we are, resurrection from the dead, it's just too far to go. And so there are those of us who are here and we believe. There are those of us who are here and we're not sure. And then there are those of us in this world who just can't imagine it to be true. A few years ago, there was a movie out. We're going to see a clip here in a minute. It's a science fiction movie called Contact. Does anybody remember this movie? 1997, Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey, and Jodie Foster plays the part of this scientist, and she has to have proof. And she has this love interest, Matthew McConaughey, who is a person of faith and sees the world in a very different way than she does. Ellie and Palmer are their names. So let's watch this first clip together.
You look beautiful, Ellie.
So do you.
Yeah, you really do.
I read your book.
Here we go.
Would you like me to quote you? Ironically, the thing that people are the most hungry for, meaning, is the one thing that science hasn't been able to give them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on. It's like you're saying that science killed God. What if science simply revealed that he never existed in the first place?
I think we're gonna need to get some air.
What?
And a few more of these.
Thank you. Whew. A little chilly out here.
Yeah, this is nice.
I got one for you.
What do you got?
Occam's razor. You've ever heard of it?
Occam's razor. Sounds like some slasher movie.
No, Occam's razor. It's a basic scientific principle. And it says, all things being equal, the simplest explanation tends to be the right one.
Makes sense to me.
All right. So what's more likely? Thank you.
You're welcome.
An all-powerful, mysterious God created the universe and then decided not to give any proof of his existence. Or that he simply doesn't exist at all. And that we created him so we wouldn't have to feel so small and alone.
I don't know. I couldn't imagine living in a world where God didn't exist, you know? I wouldn't want to.
How do you know you're not deluding yourself? I mean, for me, I need proof.
Proof.
So, you know, here at First Lutheran, we take all questions seriously. And I think this is the primary question for us because it is at the heart of who we are and what we do as a Christian family. The resurrection is central to everything we are and everything we believe. And it is so unbelievable. So, you know, I'm with Ellie right now. I want to just live with that question for a few minutes. We're going to sing right now, but I'd like to take that on just a bit in the next segment. How do we know that we're not just deluding ourselves? That, yeah, there was a Jesus. Yeah, he did great things. Yeah, he preached wonderful things. But when it gets to the resurrection, doesn't it go just a little too far? Hold on to that. Let's sing. Okay, so I'm not just setting up a straw man to knock down, but let me just tell you that if it's facts you want, they are in abundance. Okay? So most people, I think, when they deal with Christianity, they think, you know, we're just sort of blindly going into something and it's this black hole, and we're going in, and we have nothing to go on. But that simply is not the case. Let's just take, for instance, the resurrection itself. Okay, there are 5 accounts in the Gospels. 4 in the New Testament, 4 in the Gospels, but the early of which is Paul, who talks about it in one of his letters. He talks about the resurrection. He talks about the fact that the resurrection was witnessed by not only the women, but also by the disciples, and also by 500 people at once. Paul's account of this comes about 15 years, his written account, 15 years after the resurrection actually happens. And I know that sounds like a long time, but bear with me here for a minute. And so he writes about it 15 years afterwards. And then there are other writings that happen over the next 80 or 90 years. And in fact, there are intact copies of the ancient Bible, 5,600 copies of the Bible, starting with about 20 years after the last book was written. Sounds like a long time, right? Anybody ever heard of Plato? Plato's Republic, Plato's writings, there are 250 copies of Plato's writings, ancient copies, in existence. 7 of the Republic. Plato lived 400 years before Jesus, and the oldest copy we have came 1,300 years after he died. Does anybody doubt that Plato lived and wrote these things? No. I mean, in terms, I know 15 years sounds like a long time. So memories can change, all that sort of stuff. But in terms of the way the world worked in that day, that's just such a small, small number. Consider this also, and this one's really interesting. We have over 500 people who saw the resurrection, witnessed it themselves. Oh yes, and by the way, it's not just Christian writings. There are other writers who were living during that time. The most notable was a guy by the name of Josephus, who was not a Christian, but writes about the fact that there was this man named Jesus who lived in his lifetime, who was a great teacher, who walked around. He had this following. He was arrested by the Roman government, and he was put to death. And yes, there were reports of him rising from the dead amongst his followers. Outside of Christianity, I could go on forever with this stuff. Literally, I could go on for the next hour. I bore you to tears with it, but it's all there. It is a mountain of evidence. Here's the most interesting part, though. 500 people, over 500 people witnessed it, eyewitnessed it. Many of them risked their lives on the fact that they have seen this. Some of them will go to their death. Now, if this is something they made up, would they go to their death for it? No. This is something that changed their lives. And it wasn't mass delusion. It happened. You don't go to your death for something that you think happened. You saw it. You knew it. It happened. And it changed their lives. And then they told the story to others, and it changed their lives. And they told the story to the next generation, and it changed their lives. And on it goes right up to this very day. I mean, right here in Algona. So last week I was visiting with Judy, our bookkeeper, our financial bookkeeper. And I said, I'd like to give a report to the congregation. How are we doing with the flood money? Have we sent that check off yet? Judy said, no, we haven't sent it off. We keep getting money. Well, the last count I had was $2,800, and Judy didn't even give me a number. I have no idea. It just keeps coming in. Did you see that box out there, the cereal box? I'm calling it Breakfast of Champions. For those of you that don't know, what we're doing is we just ask people to bring boxes of cereal, and then on Wednesday this week, we're going to have our kids write notes, love letters, to the homeless people that live at Beacon of Hope's Men's Shelter in Fort Dodge, and we're going to take it down, and on Thursday morning, they're not only going to get fed with cereal, but they're going to get fed with notes of love about Jesus from 6-year-olds. And so I said, let's just Get some boxes together and see what happens. Well, I started with what I thought was a big box. It was about like this and that tall, and by last Sunday it was overflowing. I had to go get a bigger box. It's looking like before Wednesday I'm going to have to do it again. What's going on here? My friends, there's a story that really happened. And it changes the lives of those who encounter it and know it firsthand. So the takeaway here on all these little fun facts is this. First of all, you don't believe this stuff in a vacuum. If you want evidence, there is a mountain of evidence. So much so that leads me to the second conclusion, all of us to the second conclusion, that regardless of which way you tip, you are tipping and making a leap of faith. If you say Jesus rose from the dead, and this is most certainly true, you are making a leap of faith. If you say all of Christendom is deluding themselves and Jesus didn't rise from the dead, you are making a leap of faith. But the evidence is on our side. Don't rely on the evidence, though. Rely on what the evidence does to the people who saw it first. And now it has been handed to you, and the way it changes your life. Let's sing. Like that happens to you, it changes everything. Back to the movie Contact. And for those of you who haven't seen it, it is science fiction. And this woman, Ellie Arroway, is convinced that we need to be making contact with people who do not live on the earth. And so she spends her career doing this. It's really tantamount to professional suicide if you're an astrophysicist. But she follows it anyway. And she does make contact. And in the contact are plans for a machine so that someone can go and visit these people who live, these beings who live 26 light years away. And they get the funding. They build the machine. She goes into the pod, and the pod drops and is supposed to take her 26 light years away. And for Ellie, it's a trip that takes about 18 hours to and from. She goes, she has this conversation with these aliens, and they come in the form of her father, who's been dead for a long time. Talk about get to you where you live for her. And then she comes back. And that's what she's experienced. Meanwhile, everyone else, dozens of cameras are watching this liftoff of hers, and the pod drops through the machine and drops straight through the machine down to the bottom, and it takes just a few seconds. That's what everyone else sees. And now there's a congressional investigation because it looks like the whole thing, they've spent millions of dollars, thousands of lives have been lost, all for something that is just a sham. Watch.
Wait a minute, let me get this straight. You admit that you have absolutely no physical evidence to back up your story.
Yes.
You admit that you very well may have hallucinated this whole thing.
Yes.
You admit that if you were in our position, you would respond with exactly the same degree of incredulity and skepticism.
Yes.
Then why don't you simply withdraw your testimony and concede that this journey to the center of the galaxy, in fact, never took place?
Because I can't. I had an experience. I can't prove it. I can't even explain it. But everything that I know as a human being, everything that I am tells me that it was real. I was given something wonderful, something that changed me forever. A vision of the universe that tells us undeniably how tiny and insignificant and how rare and precious we all are. A vision that tells us that we belong to something that is greater than ourselves, that we are not, that none of us are alone. I wish I could share that. I wish that everyone, if even for one moment, could feel that awe and humility and hope.
She can't reconcile the facts. She can't prove it. But it's absolutely real. C.S. Lewis, great Christian writer, who, by the way, started out as an atheist and came to Christianity through his writing and through his encounter with other Christians. He once said that if Christianity isn't true, it's of absolutely no importance whatsoever. And if Christianity is true, if the resurrection happened, it is of infinite importance. But the one thing Christianity can't be, C.S. Lewis said, is moderately true. It's either one way or another. On that first Sunday, everyone knew what to expect. Dead is dead. Hopes are dashed. She's taking embalming fluid to finish the job. And something happened. And the world turned inside out and upside down so that nothing else would ever again be the same. And I know, it's so easy to come in here on a Sunday morning and just treat what we're doing here like it's just one thing in a number of things that we do, and it's of moderate importance. I remember a few years ago, I'm going to tell a story of my girls. They were in that softball time of life. You know that time where every weekend is taken up and you spend all your time sitting on bleachers watching your girls play softball. And we were in that time of life, and the schedule came out. It was spring ball. Schedule came out. Easter Sunday, Easter weekend, they're having a tournament in a faraway place like Ames or Omaha or someplace. Easter weekend. And that's right, games were scheduled on Sunday morning. And so we asked the coach about this. And the coach said, "Oh, don't worry. 15 minutes before the game, we're going to have a church service out on the mound." And to my girls' credit, they were completely cool with staying at home, going to church. But I will also tell you that the unspoken truth in all of that was we all knew what that meant. You don't come to tournaments, you don't play. You ride the pine. And it's only softball, and they were grade school, middle school. But for them, it was a big deal. It's either of no importance, it's either of infinite importance, but it cannot be moderately important. And the women and the men on that first Sunday knew what to expect. Let me ask you, what do you expect? I mean, you left work on Friday, took the weekend off. Some of you drove here to be with family. You kind of go through this church service and you say, well, this religion thing's a good thing and I can kind of go along with it, but it's really, let's not get too far in, it's really not for me. Or I can just sort of put it as a compartment of my life, and then we go back on Monday and we work again and we do our job and we make our money and we're with our family. All those things are very important. But what about what we do here? It's either of no importance, it's of infinite importance, but it cannot be moderately important. My friends, they went to the tomb. It was open. He wasn't in there. The clothes were in a heap on one side, the napkin rolled up and put in its place on the other. There are angels. There is an appearance of a man who has been dead for 3 days, and that doesn't happen, and your life changes because of it. Because this is a God who comes to you and says, even the most final and the most permanent thing you know of in life is no longer. Know it, believe it, and let it pour over your life like living water. Let it wash you, let it change you, let it make you new. For that is what it does. And for that we give him thanks and praise. Amen.